We're standing now to begin the last Shabbos of the year. This is the most special Shabbos of the year because it says that Shabbos blesses the coming week. And this Shabbos is blessing the coming week, which the coming week we know is Rosh Hashanah. So this Shabbos is connected to the past year and it's connected to the year that's coming. No one could have predicted what this past year was. A year ago, Rosh Hashanah, we never believed the year that we're going to have, that we had this past year. And now, we're about to end this year of the Jewish calendar year 5780. And Rosh Hashanah, which starts next week, Friday night, begins the year 5781. In our beautiful tradition, we know that the messages and the insights of the Torah portion that we read in the shul that weekend, and for many people this Shabbos, the shuls are still closed, but still is the Torah portion that's connected to that Shabbos, gives us a very important message for that week. So especially this week, when we know it's the last Shabbos of the year, when we're really excited to finally leave 5780 and start the new year, the Torah must be giving us a very important message for individuals and for our community. Give me a few minutes to share with you the beautiful message of this week's Torah portion. Do you know that in this week's Torah portion talks about the end of Moses' life? Moses passed away on the 7th day of Adar when he was 120 years old. And in this week's Torah portion tells us the last two commandments that Moses gave the Jewish people. So obviously these last two commandments must be very, very important commandments. And we read this in this week's Torah portion. This week is actually a double portion, Mitzvah and Vayelech. So Vayelech, it talks about where Moses commands the Jewish people, obviously based on God's command, the Mitzvah of Hakel, that every 7 years the Jewish people have to get together as a community in the Holy Temple and to study the Torah. And the other mitzvah, one of the last mitzvahs of the Torah, is that every person should write a Torah, write their own Torah. That's one of the 630 commandments. So one may wonder, hold on, is that one of the commandments? How come I never saw the rabbis getting up and talking about, listen, you have a commandment. The rabbis always talk about different commandments we have to fulfill. Sometimes they tell you, you got to keep Rosh Hashanah, you got to hear the shofar, you have to fast Yom Kippur, you got to eat in a sukkah, you got to give charity. We never telling them, every individual, you got to write a Torah. But everything in the Torah is real, and we really got to follow all the commandments. So the rabbis tell us a few reasons why you don't really see the emphasis that every person should write their own personal Torah, even though it says in this week's Torah portion. And the reason is because really every person has their own Torah. Every person needs to study the Torah, and every person has usually Torah books in the house, but that's not the only answer. The answer I want to share with you today is that when you go into the synagogue, what is the focal point of the synagogue? Is the ark right behind me. We open the ark. What do we have in the ark? Because we have the Torahs in the ark, right? That's what we have in the ark. We have the Holy Torahs in the ark. Now, these Holy Torahs in the ark, sometimes it's individuals that pay money to someone to write the Torah. And sometimes it's a Torah where the community gets together and writes it together. To go and tell every person to write their own Torah, let me close the ark now, that's very expensive, very costly. But when the community gets together and joins together to write a Torah, then it's really the Torah for everyone. That's why the Lubavitcher Rebbe put a great emphasis and told everyone to buy a letter in the Torah and join together with the Jewish community. But there's another great message. That our Holy Torah is going to remain strong when we all do it together. And that's why we find in synagogues, in many synagogues, you have a community Torah. Where we all join together in paying or writing the Torah, but then more importantly, we all join together to follow the Torah and live by the Torah. Well, that was the last message to Moshe to the Jewish people. Jewish unity, coming together through the Torah, all sharing together Torah. That's what's going to keep us together. Do you know that it says that the last day of Moses' life, he gave each tribe their own Torah? Because each tribe will share together their own Torah, even though the Torah says everyone should write a Torah. But when you have one Torah for the tribe and everyone unites together, then we're all part of it. We're all part of the same community. We're all part of the same Torah. And you know something interesting? If one letter of the Torah is missing, the whole Torah is kosher, is not kosher. And that teaches if one Jew is missing, is not part of the Jewish community, it affects all of us. This is a very, very important lesson for this year. Because this year, you may wonder, for many of the synagogues, we're not going to have the sellout crowds. Many people are staying home because they're concerned sitting together with the community. Our shul, we're going to be open with very limited space, social distancing, with the masks, very limited too, much smaller than we usually have. Many of the people that usually come to Chabad are staying home this year. We're offering to have an outdoor service. Also, some people are comfortable coming outdoors. We have a tent. We have indoor service. Everything with mass, social distancing. Plus, we're going to have blowing the shofar by a lake. But we may feel that this year we're not part of a community. There's going to be social distancing. But the truth is, even if we're not physically sitting together in one room, we're still part of a community. Let's say there are people that may be eating alone and you feel comfortable inviting them to your house. Invite them to your house. Unity let's say you're not comfortable inviting people to the house, but you're not sure if they have enough money or resources to buy food for the holidays. We need to make sure that they have it. That's unity. That's caring for each other. Or calling our friends and family and strangers before the Jewish New Year this year and call them up and say, you know what? I want to bless you with a happy and sweet New Year. Why not this year make a list and pick 5 people that usually are not part of your circles, call them up, how are you doing? I want to bless you for a sweet New Year. That is how we're going to be community together. And that was the last message that we got the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, we're to come together as a community. May not be physically together, but we'll all be celebrating together. But the only way we can really be together as a community unity is we care about each other and take care of each other. And that's why it was the last commandment of the Torah to write a Torah, even though most people don't write their own Torah. Most people don't even pay for their own Torah. But by us being part of the community Torah, we all part of a community, we all become part of the same mitzvah. So I want to bless everyone that the last Shabbos of this year, we should take advantage of this message. Think positive about this coming year. Stop worrying about what's going on right now. But let this week focus on Jewish unity, to reach out and tell another person in our community how you care about them, how you think about them. If something is missing by them, then it's also missing by us. God bless you all. Shabbat Shalom.